Hundreds of firearms officers, including those that are authorized to carry tasers, are voluntarily surrendering their weapons. And this is not the first time. In fact, it's been ongoing, and you'll recall in September last year when a firearms officer was charged with murder, this sent waves of panic across the police service for doing their job, and hundreds of officers surrendered their weapons then. Now, it's at this point that I remind you that this Manchester airport incident, whilst I can't comment too specifically on it because it's an ongoing situation, these were also firearms officers. Now, none of the men that were arrested have yet to be charged with anything, but these were firearms officers. Now, what I can do is point to comments by Manchester Police that said as follows. While attempting to arrest one of the suspects in the earlier altercation, 3 officers were the subject of a violent assault, where they were punched to the ground. A female officer suffered a broken nose, and all 3 were taken to hospital for treatment. As the attending officers were firearms officers, there was a clear risk during the assault of their firearms being taken from them. 4 men were arrested on the scene for affray and assault on emergency service workers, and the police acknowledge the concern. But of course, this, among other things, has doubtless led to many firearms officers surrendering their weapons for fear of being investigated for misconduct and prosecuted for criminal offences. Now, just to be clear, in this case here, it's an ongoing investigation, both for professional conduct and the criminal investigation, and that's not to say that any of those are going to come to anything. However, Sir Mark Rowley also comments that a third of officers were giving up their taser accreditation, and more than a quarter surrendering their firearms authorizations. He said in a speech that fewer officers were doing these high-risk jobs that we need in London. He said that this is due to a growing crisis in officers' confidence to act and an accountability process which had got out of kilter. Speaking, of course, of officers being investigated both professionally and criminally for the things that they are doing. Sir Mark also condemned the abuse and the violence against officers that we've seen recently in the news, and said we should be very clear. When people, be they politicians or the public, throw accusations and slurs at the police, they put them in danger, emboldening the thugs. He said some people don't care about that, the criminals, but everyone else should. He said, I say to all of those throwing insults, be very careful which side of the line you are standing. Now, I've said many times that I will criticise the police if I think they're doing something wrong. But at the same time, I always tell you that police have a very difficult job to do. It's a very dangerous job to do. And in fact, Sir Mark here commented on some officers being punched, bitten, racially abused, and 2 a week seriously injured. He said in one incident recently, an officer was driven at while trying to stop a stolen car, leaving him to require extensive surgery. Now, this is nothing new. I personally volunteered as a police officer many, many years ago now, for nearly 3 years, and I can vouch to that as well. I was monitoring the road closures around a football stadium for a very large match. One of the drivers didn't like the fact that this road was closed and drove straight at me. I literally had to jump out of the way, and a colleague of mine took the registration. He went to prison for trying to drive at me because he missed me by about that much. Mark Rowley said that the National Federation survey earlier this year showed that 95% of officers said that the way police have been treated by the government had a negative effect on their morale. This is just one of the indications of how they feel. Now, with my martial arts background, I'm hugely privileged to have been able to work with a lot of police officers and army and special forces, and to get an idea of how they think about this situation. And in fact, I have an exclusive interview on my channel here. I'm going to show you snippets of it later in this video with a Special Forces veteran, and I'll link to the full interview in the description below. Please do go and watch it. It is a fascinating interview, and I'll show you some snippets of it in a minute. Supporting the officers, Sir Mark Rowley said, officers should know that when they follow their training and act in good faith, that from their sergeant to their commissioner, they will be supported. This is the approach in the health service. It cannot be right, he said, that one part of the public sector, which also makes life and death decisions, should be held to a different standard to others. Now, from a purely personal perspective, irrespective of my martial arts background or my legal background, if I saw somebody being attacked, I would want to act with whatever knowledge and training that I have, in perfect good faith, in defense of that person, and know with confidence that the system is going to support me in protecting that person. Not really that I'm going to be then prosecuted for my actions in defending said person, but that is precisely the situation we have with these firearms officers. They are trained and asked to make these split-second life or death decisions to protect the public at large. Of course, they may not always get that right, but it's the times that when they take those actions, they can save not just one, but countless lives. And we are asking them to make those decisions. And indeed, these are unprecedentedly dangerous times in which we are currently living. Now, there are, of course, a number of things you can do to protect yourself in these unprecedented times. One of which is a course which can help you to better understand people's behavior and your surroundings. It's run by a Special Forces veteran. I will talk to you about that a bit more in a minute. But another is if you're exercising your right to the freedom of expression online, you may want to remain anonymous. And one excellent way of doing that is with NordVPN, who's a partner to my channel. And of course, I get you a fantastic discount. If you don't know what a VPN is, it's a virtual private network which assigns you an IP address instead of the IP address you get for your own router that you have at home with which you connect to the internet. And so with NordVPN's IP address, it is anonymized. Nothing is logged, nothing is saved, everything is encrypted, and so there'll be no record of what you visit on the internet, and your anonymity can be protected. But it will also protect you if you visit malicious websites or download malicious files which try to get access and take control of your systems. And it will also flag up any of these attacks, such as a man-in-the-middle attack when you're visiting websites and someone might try to slip in some software to steal the information in between. Especially if you're out and about at an airport, at a cafe, supermarkets, you'll notice that you log into their system and then you're on their network. But if there's another device on their network that compromises that network in some way, or the network itself is compromised, they might be stealing your data. Of course, as a partner to NordVPN, I can offer you a fantastic discount. That is 4 extra months free with a money-back guarantee. So if you change your mind, you can do so, but you get the extra 4 months using my link in the description below and on screen, which is nordvpn.com/BBB, because that's the nickname you gave me. So again, it protects your anonymity, it protects you from malicious websites and downloads, and that is just one way you can protect yourself. But how about now if you want to understand the people around you? Now, I've always said that when you are out and about in public, you should be acutely aware of what's going on, not just lost in your device, in your phone, and oblivious as to what's going on in the world, but you should keep this awareness of who's in front, behind, to the sides, and the general tone of the area, what we call the baseline. And that baseline of an area is so important. Now, there is a course that's been developed by Special Forces veterans, and it teaches you behavioural detection, how to become aware of the people around you and the scenario around you, whether it poses a danger. I'll drop some details in the description below. It's at the Polarm Academy. You can find the details on the website, which will be kept up to date as to when and where things are going on. And for now, let me show you a few clips of the snippet of an interview that I did with a Special Forces veteran, and the full interview is linked in the description below. Allow me to introduce you to Chris.
My father said I wouldn't be hard enough or tough enough to join the military. Is he going to run or is he going to stand? I broke the world record for running with 40 pounds on my back for the Guinness Book of Records mouth. We get to the gate and the first thing we do is get fireballed. You've got to understand about elite and Special Forces. And his mate was kicking him as hard as he could in the head. And you went, have you seen this? They locked us in there, the public locked us in, and we had to break out ourselves. And it was like the closest thing I've ever seen to Zulu in my life. I've been stabbed more than once. That's when people come unstuck, and that's why the terrorists hit you at the end. They feel spent, these veterans.
So Chris, a warm welcome. It's great to have you on the channel. For someone that doesn't know what behavioural detection is, how would you describe it to them?
If somebody's trying to hide something because they're criminals or they're terrorists or they're just trying to mislead you, the body goes into a protective screen and is shown by body language, by people crossing things in front of them, the way they talk, the way they communicate, the pitch of voice and everything else there. You've got to remember that only 7% of what we listen to is words. The rest of it sounds and such like. And then when you go to a town, you read the baseline, or a police station or a railway station, you get the baseline. The baseline is what happens day to day. Now, if something happens in that baseline, somebody's up to no good, the baseline changes, and it's realising how the baseline changed. You can look after your family. And that's what we're trying to teach on behavioural detection.
So given that each area has its own baseline, its own norm, if you will, what would you say is one thing that members of the public would ordinarily miss that perhaps they should be looking out for?
That when you work out a baseline, it can happen in seconds. We naturally get a feeling that something's not right, the old hair's gone to the back of your neck, but we don't react on it. We just think we're being silly, where we don't. That is a natural sign. The old fight, flight, or fight syndrome, as it's called. But with the new one, it's called fluffing. It's when people, rather than look at where they are and understand where they are, they prefer to look at their phones, do anything rather than adjust themselves to where they're looking.
Now, you know, I've worked together for a number of years now, Chris, including operationally, and we formed Polarm Academy, essentially together to teach civilians. What would you tell people about the Academy?
Okay, we started Polarm, as you know, Daniel, after we worked with the Army a few years ago, and basically the Academy was formed when we had a conversation how we could develop people. We brought Daniel on because he's a martial arts expert and also a legal aspect, which we were dearly lacking in Polarm. We didn't have that knowledge at all. We had people that advised us, but they didn't have the practical knowledge of doing it. And then MOD asked us if we could go down and train the Army up pre-deployment for the last deployment in Afghanistan. So Daniel come down, and I think you were shocked, Daniel, at what it was troops were like to teach. The good thing about soldiers, Marines and people like that, they love to get hands-on. So when we were there for 2 weeks teaching them, and we would get them qualified to be trainers inside their own units. And that's the first time we worked together. And we learned an incredible lot of yourself, but the legality of it.
So check out the full interview. I'll link it in the description below. Please go and watch it. But also check out the courses. We've had civilians doing courses exactly as the Special Forces would train them to enter buildings and clear rooms. You'll find it fascinating and fantastic. Check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.